Hello. I appreciate that I haven't announced this live. And yeah, the reason for that is I didn't know if I was going to go live today. But here I am. Here we go. Let me just pop this on as well onto Instagram. Hello. So yeah, thank you for joining. I didn't announce this live. Usually I do go live at this time, and I decided that today I would just actually make it more spontaneous. And the reason I decided to make it more spontaneous was because, first of all, I was extremely tired after the Polyglot conference, and I had 2 weeks really of really quite full-on work to do. And the week after, I was catching up on sleep and catching up on other things that I had to do that I hadn't had a chance to do. So I decided that I would not create a question this week and not do a whole, sort of build up to it. I decided it would be better for me, possibly not for everyone else, but for me, just to do a spontaneous, here I am. So it's good to be back, and it's good that some of you have come as well. Thank you very much for coming. The Instagram feed is not working for some reason. I have no idea why, but it's not. But yeah, here I am, and I wanted to talk about being a polyglot, because there were a couple of lives that I did from the Polyglot conference, and one of them was sort of talking about sort of languages and speaking languages and stuff, and what it was like, an event like the Polyglot conference, and how that affected, sort of how you learn languages and how you use languages and your motivation with a thing like the conference going on. And one of the comments that I got was, and I thought it was really interesting, that if you learn lots of languages, basically you don't get to focus as much on or go into as much depth. And I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that, because there is kind of a grain of truth in that kind of statement. That, for example, if you are focusing on any one thing, whether it's languages or whether it's something else, basically, as soon as you add something else to your time, you divide your time. And that's true. There's no way you can deny that. However, most people I come across tend to study, say, a language or study a thing to a certain point. And then once you get to that point and you're kind of comfortable doing whatever it is you wanted to do originally, and you meet your goals, you tend to stop. And then you kind of tread water. You don't really move much further with it necessarily. You may go back and feel more comfortable in certain areas or with certain elements of what you're learning, but it tends to become something you start doing automatically. And so, yes, you could end up saying that you don't have as much time for going even further deeper into the language, but the reality is, unless you're really into something, like you're doing your postdoctoral research and you're continuing to research in a field, not many people really go down that route of learning things to the point that they never stop learning that one thing. The most frequent thing that I come across is people learn things to a point where they feel confident and comfortable and they can do what they want to do or need to do or set out to do in the beginning. And then they kind of just drift along with that. And they may use the knowledge, they may go back and revisit certain elements, but what they don't tend to do is to continually research until they die in that one thing. There are people that do that kind of thing, for sure. There are people that will continually try to improve their ability, their knowledge in one thing, and I think that's absolutely a rewarding goal in and of itself, but it's not the norm for many people. And so this is where I say, if you do learn more languages, then you do find that you get to that point as well with other languages too, where there's only so much you necessarily need to or can use in your day-to-day life, because you've got other things that come on. So learning more languages doesn't necessarily mean that you don't go far, or as far as someone might with one or two or even three of those languages, or maybe more. And the reason is because that it's not a true dichotomy to believe that learning multiple languages and learning a few languages well are mutually exclusive. Like, you can't say that, for example, just because somebody learns or studies multiple languages, that they therefore no longer have the knowledge that they had if they studied a language or two languages to a very high level and studied in depth into the literature, the culture, or some aspect of it. I found that there are a number of people who do that and then also study other languages. And the reason they study the other languages is because they simply got to the point they wanted to be with the language or languages that they had. And then they decided to diversify and to study something else. They maybe just wanted that same feeling again of getting into it. They may not take the other languages to the same high levels, but I found it interesting that there was a perception out there that maybe if you don't, if you study lots of languages, it then therefore means that you're not going to have in-depth knowledge of a couple of them, because that's not been my experience. And I've certainly met a number of people, and I think that it's a modern false dichotomy that's set up. And the reason why I think it's a modern false dichotomy is because in the past, when people studied languages, or when people studied languages in depth, it was actually expected and encouraged that they would read a wide breadth. And what that meant many, many years ago was that, for example, if a book on a certain topic or a certain language had been written in German or in French or in Latin or in Russian or whatever else, that no matter what your language of instruction at university, you would be expected to be reading those things. And if there's no translation, you would need to learn those languages to the point that you could read the content and incorporate it into your studies. So the idea that somebody who studies a language or languages in depth can't study multiple languages, and people who study multiple languages can't study a language or more in depth, that doesn't necessarily work as a concept, or as a dichotomy. It doesn't work that way. So I wanted to sort of just highlight that, because I thought it was an interesting idea, and I've certainly come across that before as well, that there is an idea that if you study one language, you can't, or you study multiple languages, you can't be particularly good at a number of them. And I would also say that there are countries out there where you receive your education in a number of languages. So, for example, places like Luxembourg, where you would study and use actively 3 languages throughout your schooling. And that's just in Europe. Okay, and then you may have home languages as well that are different, and then you may learn other languages just because after Luxembourgish, French, and German, you study, I don't know, English and maybe another language. I don't know, something else. But you can certainly achieve quite a lot in more than just 1 or 2 languages, which was kind of the idea that was written in response to this question that I put out a few weeks ago. And so I wanted to just sort of address that and say, the reality of being a polyglot is that you do have different levels of languages, and those languages can sort of, depending on when you're using them and how you're using them and how much and what for, your ability can change. And of course, that is absolutely true, and that there's no, as far as I'm concerned, there's no denying that. That sometimes you may feel more confident in a language than another time because you're using it more or you're just doing different things in it. That's completely true. And then also the other thing as well, I think with people learning multiple languages is that you don't necessarily have the same goals and objectives for every single language. And the reason you don't is because you don't use them all for the same purpose. So if you're not planning to do studies to go into depth into an area of literature or culture or whatever it is, or linguistics for a specific language, or the language history or development or whatever it is you decide you want to study about that language, you don't necessarily have those same goals for every single language you study. Just you can quite simply do that, be very happy, and then take on another few languages. And actually, relatively speaking, in the span of somebody's lifetime, within a decade, I mean, it's quite reasonable that somebody could study, a language a year even, and just get to a point where they feel confident having a bit of a chat in the language, depending on the language, of course, because I mean, every language is different. The language you speak or the languages you speak will determine how far you can progress within a year. The time you dedicate to it will also determine how far you get with the studies as well. But there's no reason why somebody couldn't pick up languages and go through within a decade and study quite a number of languages, and then maybe they're not amazing at all of them, but there may be a couple there that they've really focused on. I don't see any issue with that. I think the issue then comes is when people start talking about this idea of sort of fake polyglots and this idea of why somebody's doing it, and superimposing an idea in that's sort of plucked out of the air as to why somebody might want to do that. And only the person who's doing it will know what their intention is and why they're doing it. So I kind of try not to second guess too much why people would do things, and like them to, if I have a question about it, then I'll simply just ask them and let them explain. But most of the time, really, I'm more of a, you do you and I'll do me, and it's great that we do this thing and we both like, and that's kind of my standpoint on most things, to be honest with you. I don't tend to worry or dwell on what other people are doing. That's their thing, and they're free to do what they want to do, in terms of, as long as it's not hurting anyone, they're free to do what they want to do. And within the language learning community, I mean, I don't particularly see it as a thing that's going to harm somebody. I see it as generally a positive thing that people are learning and continuing to learn. I think that that's a worthy cause. So yeah, I did think it was quite an interesting thing to get to say that that it was seen as almost impossible to learn more than 2 languages. And I definitely don't agree that it's impossible to learn 2 languages or more than 2 languages well, and to a point that it sounds really good for speakers of the language, that you speak them at a level where people are genuinely impressed with the ability. I think that that's, to my mind, something I've witnessed on multiple occasions, and yeah, I mean, absolutely not something I've thought it was a problem. I've certainly witnessed it myself firsthand, how people have spoken languages that I know, and they've really quite articulate and can manage themselves quite well in a number of languages. So yeah, I mean, doing it is possible. I think that this is the thing, is being sort of very conscious about the fact that it does take time to learn a language. It's not something you can do overnight. It's not something you can do in a couple of days or weeks or whatever. It is something that takes time, and to get it well, it takes time. So yeah, being conscious of that, and that the level we reach is definitely something that will be different from language to language, I think is important. Okay, hello, Aniko. Nice to see you. I'm gonna just have a quick look and see the. Hello, hola, ¿qué tal? Okay. 中文好. Oh, 早上好. Nice to see you. Richard, I thoroughly enjoyed talking at the Lingua Cultura event at the Polyglot conference. It's great to be part of this wonderful community. Lucas, thank you very much for joining and for being part of it. I really appreciate it. The language, the language and culture topics that were part of the conference, particularly part of the Lingua Cultura experience element of the event, were really enjoyable for a lot of us. So I'm looking forward to processing those recordings over the coming weeks and getting them into the Saturn Theatre for more people to see, and then eventually we will release them as well publicly so that more people can enjoy them. Thank you for being part of it, and yeah, be wonderful to have you back again. Thank you. I'm very, very grateful actually to all the people who took part in the conference. It was it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. And yeah, there were a number of things that as an organizer, it's always sort of a thing that you have to work on, difficulties or issues and things. And the good thing about the conferences is that it was a 10-day experience. So it meant that any technical or other issues that I had in the beginning, I could be alerted to them by people who had those difficulties, and I could work through them and resolve them and solve them during the conference. So I was really, really grateful for the feedback as I went along to be able to make improvements, and hopefully, yeah, it was a good thing. And of course, the conference is still, we're into extra time, so it will be going on until the 7th and of November, and so we've got another week of that. And then after that, the live environment will be open for an entire year, and there are going to be language exchanges going on all year. They're already plotted in until the end of next month, and I'll be adding them in for the rest of the year, and then we'll get more and more coming in. So yeah, you're very welcome to still join the conference. It's simple to get involved. You just go to the register button on the polyglotconference.com website and click and join, and yeah, you can be part of it too still, and you can watch the videos and stuff from the conference, and there'll be more added soon. There's an entire course of Georgian as well, which I thought was super cool, like a 6-day course of Georgian, which was really cool. But yeah, there were lots of really good things. I studied so much time to put into language learning, but I personally don't know where to start. I'm not sure if there's a strict guideline for all languages, such as grammar, vocabulary, etc. Although it depends on what you're doing. So in terms of strict guideline and sort of what you do for every language being the same, I don't know how much of a huge believer I am in that in that kind of thing, simply because when it comes to language learning, the materials that you have tend to be different. So there are certain things that are a constant when it comes to language learning, to be successful in language learning. One of them is doing it regularly and doing it often, and thinking about the language when you're not studying it actively. Those things are true regardless of the language. Listening to it as much as possible, trying to be exposed to it as much as possible, all those things are true whatever you're doing. But in terms of like grammar, vocabulary, etc., that really does depend on the materials you have available. I would say that a lot of the grammar and the vocabulary you tend to pick up through using the materials in the language. And so if you find things that you find generally interesting, you're more likely to listen to them or read them over and over again. And you pick things up that way more often than not. But the key thing is that sort of studying it regularly and doing it often. That's the real secret. There is no magic pill to learning languages. I mean, there's really no magic pill. There's nothing anyone can particularly sell you that's going to make you automatically an amazing language learner. You just have to work at it. I mean, I know it's not possibly the sexiest thing to say or the most exciting thing to say, but it's true. People can share with you things that they've done. They can share tricks and techniques and things that have worked for them, and you might be able to adapt them for you to suit your personality, to suit your lifestyle. But it all comes down to it suiting you and your lifestyle. Because if it doesn't suit you and your lifestyle, it's not going to work. Because you're not me, and you're not Luca Lampariello, and you're not Lindy, and you're not Stu J, and you're not Professor Arguelles, and you're not all of these people who have done things that have done well for them and for me and for whoever else. You're not the same person. You will also have things that work well for you that may not work well for me or for somebody else. It's absolutely fine. It's the key is finding the thing that works well for you. That's the key. That's the big difference, I think. And you can be, I guess, coached or helped. You can talk to people to find out what that is and explore that. But I don't think it's something that, for example, I always say whenever somebody wants to learn a language, and I've had somebody working with me to improve their language over the last half a year or so, and that person has done very well. I mean, finished their exams finally at university, and managed to even get a job using the language, which is great, and which, I mean, makes me very, very happy. And as I said, I mean, this isn't my normal job. I've just been doing this as a favor to the family, and actually really enjoyed it as well. So I've got a lot out of it personally because I've seen that growth, and I've also enjoyed the interaction. But the first thing I said to this person when we started was, I cannot teach you a language. The only thing I can do is work with you to kind of spar coach, like you do at the gym, I guess, when you have a trainer, and they help to mirror what you're doing, and they help to show you techniques to improve things, and then you try different things out and you see how they work. And that's, I think, where maybe the whole idea of a language coach or something like that works, because no one can learn that for you. And a teacher can teach you things in a way to help you understand or to explain certain things. That's definitely possible. But what you do with it is really down to you and no one else. So yeah, it's I hope that helps. I know it's probably not the answer people want to hear. It really, I know. Hey Tomek, nice to see you. Let me see. Time to put into language. Hello Richard, good to see you. How are you doing? Doing well, thank you, Rasmus. How are you? Good to see you. I'm just happy to be able to converse in other languages. I don't think I'm anywhere near fluent in any of them. Yep, that's absolutely fine, Tiffany. I think that's a valid reason to learn languages. If you really want to just talk to people and communicate, why not? It's absolutely a valid reason to learn languages. And I think when we take the pressure off ourselves to think that we don't have to be perfect, we can just be and do and speak. That's kind of where the magic happens, I think. Because once you put too much pressure on yourself, I think it starts to get more like a job and a bit boring, and we get frustrated and annoyed. And I appreciate there are people that learn that, who learn languages, and they learn languages because they want to actually work or do something that's very specific in the country, and they have to pass an exam, and it can be quite stressful. And I know that exists. And so I'm speaking very generally, but I think that when we have the luxury of being able to learn languages as a fun thing to do, I think it's good to try and take that pressure off ourselves and enjoy it. Lucas, I was really nervous. I didn't expect 30 people to show up, but all of them were so nice. Yeah, they are very nice at the conference. Generally, people are very, very nice. I just appreciate all the work you and Avishta do. Thank you, Lucas. I really appreciate that. And Avishta as well. She's been great to work with. Super, super nice. And yeah, I mean, anyone listening, Avishta actually organizes the the Lingua Cultura experience on Clubhouse. So if you're on Clubhouse and you fancy joining, I think that she's going to do something again next year around springtime. So watch out. I'll mention it as soon as I have confirmation. I'll mention it so that you can join. It's a lot of fun talking on with other people, and to, you may want to even hold your own room or do something yourself, and talk about something. It's quite cool to do. Jeff, I divide my languages into 3 groups. 1, my home native languages. 2, my school academic languages. And 3, my self-taught languages. Sounds like a sensible way to divide them, actually, JR. I have a similar type of thing as well. There are home languages and different languages for me too, so that sounds very sensible to me. Hoi, Richard. Hoi, George. Hoe gaat ie? Okay. Joe, did you hear about the protests in Georgia because of the rigged? No, I didn't. I haven't heard of those. I haven't been following the news actually very well for the last few weeks because of the conference and the work I've been doing on that. But yeah, Richard, appreciate you. Thank you very much, Flowcast. I appreciate it. Almost. By the way, how's your Estonian coming along? So I took a break for 2 weeks from Estonian because of the conference, because of just I didn't have time. I was working on the conference from maybe about 6 or 7 a.m. to about 1 or 2 a.m. every day for 10 days, and I was absolutely exhausted. I was really, really tired. So I didn't have a chance, and I thought trying to put that pressure on myself to study Estonian for those 2 weeks was just crazy. And then when it finished, I took the week afterwards just to sort of to not do anything much, to catch up on the work that I had to catch up on, and also to sleep because I needed to sleep to get my energy levels back. So now I started again with Estonian. So this is my 3rd day back today on Estonian, and yeah, I'm starting to remember things again, which is good. But we'll see how it goes. I'll try and do a proper update on it soon and talk about my Estonian. But yeah, it's been pretty cool. Richard, jij bent inspiratie om Nederlands te leren. Mijn inspiratie om Nederlands te leren. Ja, geweldig hoor. Ja, hij had echt bedankt voor alles wat hij doet. Ja, bedankt hoor. Ik vind het heel goed dat je Nederlands wilt leren. Dat is mooi zeg. Dat is een bijzondere taal voor mij ook. Ja, ik heb in Nederland gewoond en dus voor mij is Nederlands echt een bijzondere taal. Dus ja, mooi. Bedankt. What's the average time to be fluent in a language? I've been studying Japanese for the last 3 months, and it seems to be easy to speak once you're really in love with the language. So Isaac, it's, as we would say back where I'm from, how long is a piece of string? So a piece of string could be any length that you cut it. It just depends how much time you're putting into it. It depends on the language and the languages you already speak. It depends on whether you're learning to read, write, and speak the language. So a language like Japanese, for example, I can imagine to speak it without reading and writing it would be a little bit easier. Reading and writing it will take a little bit longer because it's all the kanji and stuff like that going in, so it gets a bit more complicated. The hiragana and katakana aren't so bad, but the kanji is a little bit more complex. The grammar can be a bit weird to get used to from the intermediate level onwards, I think. So sort of when you can say basic things, it's not so bad, but then when you start messing around with the verb forms and suffixes and whatever else to change things up, it can get a little bit weird. And then you've got the levels of formality and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, I didn't do much with Japanese, and my Japanese is still not very good. But what I do remember of my Japanese is that it was okay in the very beginning, to sort of start saying things, and it slowly, well, very quickly got a little bit more challenging to say quite complex stuff. But I'm glad it's going well for you. And how long it takes, I think it depends how much into and exposed to the language you are. I know some people who manage to get by with Japanese relatively quickly, because they're really, really into the culture or some element of the culture, and that really helps, I think. can you say something in Turkish? Bir şey? Hayır. Türkçe, evet. Çünkü ben bu arada Üsküp'te yaşıyorum ve bu arada Türkçe'de konuşuyoruz. Merkezde her zaman, şimdi değil ama genelde Türkçe kullanıyorum. Çünkü bu arada Makedonya'da Türkçe bana göre üçüncü dildir ve çok sık ben Türkçe hem televizyondan hem merkezden insanlardan Türkçe anlıyorum ve kullanıyorum ve ve bu yüzden evet, hiçbir problem yok. Ahoj, hej, dobrý den, cześć, havar, namaste, ni hao, ciao, hola, from Michigan, USA. Oh, very well. Irene, thank you very much. What a multilingual greeting. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the conference, Irene. Cześć, jak się mamy? Hi from France, hi. Saludos cordiales desde México. Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Todo bien? Es cool. A ver. Totally agree, because people out there claim to be able to speak a language because they attend a school. Yeah, it's weird actually. The reverse has also been true. I've met people who have studied a language at university, for example. And certainly even having a degree in a language, or even more than a degree in a language, does not necessarily mean you have the same knowledge as somebody who just speaks the language. Or learned it, not somebody who's born speaking it, or born in an environment where they spoke it from a young age, or went through the school system. I'm talking about people who just learned it, right? So I've had interviews with people who have got a degree from university in a language, but then were not capable of actually being able to use that language for professional reasons, for work. It happens. Possibly not a popular opinion, but it's true. They could possibly translate things, or they could read literature, but they couldn't speak to a client on the phone. And that can be a problem if you want to get a job where you have to speak to a client and you can't speak to a client. That can be a problem. So I have had experiences like that where I've interviewed people and they honestly couldn't use the language. So yeah, it's the opposite happens too. It's not just that you study language in depth, at university, but then you can't actually, there's not really much practical application in terms of like business use for certain roles. And that practical application for those roles is what the employers are looking for. And if you can't do it, then you can't do it. That doesn't necessarily take away from the knowledge that they have in other areas of the language, but I just want to kind of sort of balance it out with that. Cześć, hello. Hola, привет from Chicago. Nice to see you, Tom. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining. Let me see. Okay. Hi, Richard. Here's my $500,000 question. How do native English speakers learn phrasal verbs and figure out their meanings? Has it ever happened to you to need a phrasal verb that you've never read? Phrasal verbs tend to be quite common in spoken English, so we tend to use them a lot. They would tend to be there would possibly be some that I can't recall having seen anything like that or come across something where I haven't understood a phrasal verb. I'm trying to think. I don't think so. No, it tends to be Latinate vocabulary that is difficult for English speakers. So, or Greek vocabulary, like knowing certain words for very specific things tend to be the difficult thing for English speakers who have studied and done everything in school in English. And the other thing that would be quite difficult sometimes is knowing the groupings of certain things. So they may not know, I don't know, like you have things like a school of fish, like in Japanese and Chinese and in Korean, and a lot of the Asian languages, you have these sort of group of certain objects. We have that with certain things, like a group of whatever, a school of fish, or we have that kind of thing. And I think we have it in many, many languages. But yeah, those kinds of things can be quite tricky for people if they don't know them all, because you don't use them very often. They tend to be a sort of a thing that you do as an activity, and afterwards, like, people will know the common ones, like a flock of birds and a pack of wolves and things, but they won't necessarily know more stranger ones. I don't know how common a murder of crows is for, I don't know, but there'll be certain things that they might not know, like that. What was the other one? A pod of dolphins is a pod of dolphins, we say. But yeah, some of them are quite popular, but other ones not. But yeah, phrasal verbs, to my knowledge, doesn't tend to be a big issue for people. I think it is more for people learning English. They're quite tricky. My boyfriend is Swedish, and that does give us a lot of motivation for learning Swedish. At least that's how it is to me. Yeah, well, that's a very good motivation, having a partner from the country. That's how I learnt Macedonian. So yeah, I understand that very, very well. I do. Thank you. I'm very happy to have an answer. I'm currently fluent in English, Turkish, and hopefully in the future Arabic and Spanish. Fantastic. I like that. Aferin sana. Fantastic. Because I think Lindy also started learning Tagalog because she dates a person for Lindy is learning Tagalog because of that as well. Richard, can we access Polyglot Conference? Yes, you can, Yoga Bliss Dance. So all you need to do is go to the Polyglot Conference website and click on register, and you can still register for the extra time. And there are still language exchanges that are going on, and they will be going on all year. And the presentations are already in the Saturn Theatre, and the recordings from the live events are slowly being uploaded. As soon as I can get them done, I'll have them up there, but they will be there before they are public, way before they're public. So yeah, if you're interested, feel free to go there and sign up. And you'll also have a ticket then and access for any future events that we have in the conference space. So there will be other events that take place throughout the year. Then normally last year, I think we had 3 additional events that if you had a ticket for the conference last year, you could go to the same place basically and sign in. So there you go. If you have any problems, just let me know. I'm very open. You can get in touch. Do you think getting a good night's sleep helps with learning languages, or does it not matter? Absolutely matters. I can't really function without a good night's sleep. I need my sleep. Depends on the individual, but for me personally, absolutely. I definitely need my sleep. Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam. İyi akşamlar. Evet, dobry wieczór. Good evening from Uzbekistan. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining. Gul Mehri. Support a good luck with the kanji. Yeah, I love it. Good luck with the kanji. Yeah, kanji is fun. Kommt es dir manchmal vor, dass du viele Wörter auf bestimmten Sprachen vergisst, obwohl du diese Sprache schon lange beherrschst? Jo. Ja, es kann sein. Ich meine, also so viele Wörter, es kommt drauf an. Also wenn ich die Sprache wirklich beherrsche, dann ist dann schon ein bisschen schwieriger, alle die Wörter zu verlieren. Ich meine, so wie Deutsch zum Beispiel, ich kann die Sprache immer noch und ich wohne seit lange nicht mehr in Deutschland. Aber ja, also besonders wenn es so eine Sprache ist, die ich eigentlich nicht so viel gelernt habe oder nicht so gut sprechen kann oder so oder gesprochen habe oder so, dann ja schon. Aber im Allgemeinen ist es ja für mich eigentlich nicht so ein großes Problem gewesen, besonders weil ich eigentlich mich auf germanischen, slawischen und lateinischen Sprachen konzentriert habe Und deswegen war es für mich eigentlich ein bisschen einfacher, weil meine Muttersprache auch Englisch ist und dadurch war es auch vielleicht auch ein bisschen einfacher, um Deutsch zu lernen, weil die Sprache eigentlich Englisch ist eigentlich eine Mischung von, ja, so Deutsch und Französisch sozusagen. So, ist ein bisschen bisschen grob, aber na ja, es ist halt so. Und wenn man schon, die Sprachen lernt, dann kann man die nicht so schnell wieder vergessen, denke ich mal. So, das ist meine Meinung. Ich meine, es kommt drauf an, jeder ist anders, aber ja, für mich ist es schon so gewesen. Es basiert sogar auf Spanisch, meiner Muttersprache. Okay, interessant. Also für mich nicht so wirklich. Es muss ein paar Worte schon, aber nicht so viele. Ich meine, dass ich die Sprache vergesse oder so. Nee, das nicht. Have you ever learned programming languages before? I mean, before I learned real languages, I had a hobby of trying out and learning a language, programming languages. Okay, yeah, so years and years and years and years and years ago, in a different life, I did a very basic programming language. Well, a couple of basic programming languages, but nothing like you see people learning nowadays. One of them was Visual Basic, which is like years ago, so it tells you how long ago it was. And the other one was just HTML, because when computers were new, to actually create a website, you had to write it in HTML. There weren't the templates around like there are nowadays. So yes, I had to learn how to write in those, but I don't know if I'd really say that they're true programming languages. Like, you sort of C++, Python, and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I've dipped into those kinds of things before, but not proper full-on programming languages that I've been very good at. I was definitely very bad at them. Walaikum assalam. Приветствую, hello from Uzbekistan. Nice to see you, Aslanbek. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Let me see. I know 0 Icelandic right now. Do you think it's unrealistic to plan for an exchange in Iceland in 18 months where all courses will be in Icelandic? I'm kind of scared. Icelandic vocab is complex. Rasmus, not necessarily. 18 months is a fair amount of time, and from English, it's not so far away. It's not so crazy. Depends how much time you spend doing it. I mean, if you do it 1 day a week for 18 months, then no. But if you do it quite full on for 18 months, absolutely. Check out, to get you started, I mean, I did a video just with some Icelandic reference, for Icelandic course stuff that you can look at materials. There's one called Íslenska fyrir alla, which is free materials. So free materials that you can get for Icelandic. But also there's the Icelandic online course with a lot of grammar and stuff from the University of Iceland. So you can check those out and have a look. I think it's called Icelandic Online. It's free, I think, to sign up for. So yeah, have a look at those and see. Are you planning to learn Georgian in the future? Good question. So I did the Georgian 6-day course as part of the conference last week, and I enjoyed getting back to it. So I studied Georgian many years ago. It must be about 15 years ago. I studied Georgian at university in Malmö in Sweden. But it felt more like a very academic look at Georgian, more than actually learning to speak it, because we went through the grammar and we didn't do that much vocabulary. At least I didn't remember that much vocabulary, and it felt more like a look at the grammar of Georgian, and so yeah, I quite fancy it. Georgian's not a language you just do for fun and expect it to go in. It's it's a language that requires a lot of attention. And it's not like any of the languages really that I speak already. There are a number of words in Georgian that are similar or the same, or from international words, or some words that are the same as in Turkish or Persian, for example. But there are an awful lot of words and an awful lot of pronunciation issues that make it difficult to remember the words. And the grammar is definitely very different to any of the other languages I speak particularly well. I'd like to. We'll see. At the moment, I'm actually quite into getting back into Celtic languages. I'm quite enjoying that. I'm enjoying the whole Estonian thing still, and we'll see. I've been revising a bit of Maori as well, but from last year when I was doing it, so I've been going back to Maori. We'll see with Georgian. I'd like to. I'd like to think that I would. I actually got my book down the other day just to have another flick through to see. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Do you speak Georgian yourself, Toruk? Okay. And get as much resources as you can. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So Lucas is saying, can recommend a book named English Idioms for University. It's really great with exercises in it to understand idioms and phrasal verbs. Oh, nice recommendation. Thank you, Lucas. Phrasal verbs first, that you chop a tree down and then you chop it up. Absolutely. Yeah, you could try chopping it up before you chop it down. Might get a bit messy if it falls on you in between. Hi, Richard. How many Scandinavian languages do you speak? Also, do you speak Icelandic? So, okay, I studied Icelandic. I have studied Icelandic. I studied Old Icelandic at university for a year. I studied Swedish at university for 2 years, and I can speak Swedish, and I do use it quite often for work. So Swedish, yes. I've also studied Danish and I studied Norwegian for fun, and also some Faroese for fun. I can get by in kind of a Swedified Norwegian and Danish, I would describe them as. Faroese, no, I couldn't have a conversation at this point in Faroese. Icelandic, I could probably have a conversation with you in Icelandic, in modern Icelandic. I did the summer school in the university in Iceland a number of years ago, and I've been back to Iceland since and used the language with locals. So yes, I do understand Icelandic, and yes, I can speak Icelandic to a degree. I'm not going to say that I'm like amazing at Icelandic, because I'm not. But yes, I could probably still speak Icelandic enough to have a conversation with people. Let's see. As an ex-colleague prof and a smart older person that spent sounds a bit unrealistic unless you know related languages, or simply very good. Oh, that was for Erasmus, sorry. I was completely reading out the wrong one. I am learning Greenlandic and I'm in pain. Whoop, whoop-a-doop. Honestly, I feel that pain. Greenlandic is like super different to a lot of languages, so yeah, that makes sense that you're feeling pain. But is it worth it? Are you enjoying it at least? I could totally get why you're finding it difficult. It's a super different language to learn. Para aquellos que quieren aprender español con acento latinoamericano, les recomiendo que vean un programa en YouTube llamado Caso Cerrado. Uy, muy bien, gracias, Jorge. Greenlandic sounds so nice. Don't mention too much hearing. Yeah, I do already. Lucas, you're right. I already do. I actually have a Greenlandic book on my shelf, and no, I'm trying to avoid picking up too many new ones at the moment, especially ones like that are just, they would require too much of my energy at the moment. My main issue with Greenlandic is the lack of resources, but I'll be moving there. So it'll be easier for me. Wow, whoopadoop. You're moving to Greenland. Now I'm officially wanting to go and live in Greenland as well, because it's amazing. I'd love to go. I've never been. I've been wanting to go to Greenland for so long, but just never. It's never happened. Hopefully soon. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. But yeah, I wanted to go once from Reykjavik when I was there, and I was going to go, and then I didn't go, and then I regretted that I didn't go because the prices of tickets went up from where they were, but instead I spent a week on the Faroe Islands. So I went to the Faroe Islands and I spent time in Tórshavn, and then I went up to Norðoy and Suðuroy, and really enjoyed it. So I don't regret it. I'm not a person that really lives by regrets, but I did think, oh, I should have gone when it was a bit cheaper. And even though it would have been a very difficult thing for me to organize going to both places, it was probably a good opportunity to do it because the flight tickets were actually cheaper than they were the next time I looked, by quite a lot. And also the timings for the flights were a lot better as well. But I didn't. And yeah, hopefully one day. What are you going to be doing there? You're going to live there. That's amazing. I love that you're going to live there. It's fantastic. You have to tell me more. I'm intrigued. I think as a language learner, anything can be a source of source to learn from. Absolutely. So you have to make your own stuff, right? There are a few people on social media platforms that speak Greenlandic, so I'm sure you can find some people to help you. Wenn du irgendwann noch einmal in Deutschland sein solltest, schau gerne mal vorbei. Ja, danke. Das wäre toll. Dankeschön. Wo bist du eigentlich in Deutschland? Es ist ein großes Land. Also vorher war ich so immer in Berlin und ja, also zum Besuch oder so. Ja, aber ich habe eigentlich in Nordrhein-Westfalen gewohnt, auf der anderen Seite des Landes, aber ja, in Berlin war ich sehr häufig. Also jetzt in den letzten 2 Jahren war ich ja gar nicht. Ich meine, ist ja völlig unmöglich, mit Covid. Love it. You're learning French right now. What resources should I use? Do you know, it's really difficult to say. I find it hard to recommend French, Spanish, German, and stuff resources because there are so many. My best advice is to actually go to a bookshop and have a look at what you think works for you, or get lots of resources and read through and just have a look through. Spend a good week just looking at the different courses that there are and see which ones you want to open, because you have to have something you want to work with and want to open. So that's the best advice I can give you, and that will depend on you as an individual, more than me saying this one's particularly good, because there are so many. I couldn't possibly recommend one. Isn't Georgian a language with an insanely difficult verb conjugation system? Absolutely, JR. It's an absolute nightmare. It's beautiful, but the verbs are crazy in Georgian. Drake, you're Georgian. Wow. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So you'll know your language. It's one of the only countries where people say our language is very difficult, and I actually agree with you. You get a lot of people say that, and Georgian, I actually agree. For a lot of people on the planet, Georgian is particularly difficult to learn, or to at least to speak it to any great degree. Hey Lee, nice to see you. Olá, como você está? Tudo bem, obrigado. Tudo bem. Com você? Can I speak Portuguese? Sim, falo português também. Ég meina að þú farst að læra íslenskt táknmál. Nei, það var ekki ég. Nei, ég var bara þarna á námskeiði á Íslandi, Reykjavík, og það var en vinur minn, og hann teiknar svo ESL frá Bandaríkjunum, og talaði við fólkið þarna á Íslandi, en það var bara að tólka hvað það var á ESL, íslensk táknmál, og það var það. Það var ég gerði vídeo á YouTube fyrir það, og það var gaman að sjá. Það var ekki hvað ég hafði lært. Það var ekki það. En líka íslensku. Jag är ekki núna að tala og læra íslensku núna. Makedóníu ég get ekki talað íslensku. Það þarf, það þarf bara, það er ekki svo létt að tala íslensku hérna. Það er ekki svo með fólk frá Íslandi í Skopje. En ég var á Íslandi núna fyrir 2 árum seinna núna og ég tala við fólkið á íslensku þarna og núna ekki bara að læra frá grein af frá fólkinu þarna á Íslandi í Facebook og það er allt sem ég get gert með íslenska núna. It's entertaining to see, isn't it? Okay, cool. Okay. He dicho caso cerrado. Muy bien, caso cerrado. O caso cerrado. Cerrado. Dependiendo de tu acento, ¿sí? Hello from Estonia. Hey, nice to see you. Tere hommikust. Nice to welcome. No, I didn't. Okay. My partner is Greenlandic. Whoopadoop. Wow. And lives there. So I'll be moving in with him. Wow, that's very exciting. I like that. For love, learning Icelandic for love. That's amazing. Fantastic. Good on you. And good luck with the Icelandic. Keep me updated. I want to know more. Ich wohne in Düsseldorf. Also Nordrhein-Westfalen. Oh ja, ich kenne Düsseldorf. Ich bin schon öfters da gewesen. Ja, schön. Ja, okay, dann hoffentlich schon. Ich meine, und wenn nicht, dann hoffentlich werden wir was in Berlin oder irgendwo organisieren. Es kommt drauf an, also von Flügen von Mazedonien aus ist ein bisschen schwierig. Jetzt im Moment ist es schwierig, aber mal schauen, was jetzt nach Covid passiert. Ich meine, im Moment ist es volles Durcheinander. Ich meine, ja, aber du weißt, wie es ist. I remember one time you recommended to use religious-related stuff for those languages with smaller number of resources regardless of one's belief or lack thereof. Yeah, exactly. So, so yes, you can. So Erasmus, there I'm trying to think what it was called. You're right. So some religious texts, actually, because the Bible, for example, has been translated into many languages. Depending if it's for your faith, then you might want to choose something that's related to your particular faith. But yeah, I know, for example, is it what are they called? There's a group. It's called, I want to say, the Lighthouse. They've got a lot of things on their website. It's the Jehovah's Witnesses people. They have a lot of things in different languages on their site. In lots of languages, and they even have audio quite often, and languages that you wouldn't expect to get materials in. So I'm not sure about Greenlandic, but they might have some. Icelandic for sure they have. There are an awful lot of things for Icelandic, actually, to be honest. There are quite a lot of stuff that you can get quite easily for Icelandic. There's the Teach Yourself as well. You've got Teach Yourself, and you've got Asimil as Icelandic, Colloquial has Icelandic. So there are quite a lot of things you can get for Icelandic that are pretty good. I'm watching this on a delay, but A Murder of Crows. Yes, A Murder of Crows, indeed. Free. Okay. Which languages can you speak fluently? I have no idea. It depends on your definition of fluently, and it also depends on how I'm feeling and what's happening in my life. It's very difficult to answer that question. And to be fair to everybody, I tend to just let people decide. If you think I speak a language, then great. If you decide I don't, also fine. It's entirely up to you to think what I can and can't speak. I don't really mind. Have you seen that new Korean TV show that's blowing up right now, Squid Games? I've heard of it. I've seen a lot of jokes about it, particularly from. I saw a couple of British comedians make some jokes about it. It was quite funny, but I've never seen it. I mean, never seen it. I've heard people talking about it as well. sort of in my friend groups, but I've not watched it yet. I don't know if I want to. It looks a bit weird. It looks a bit. It's not kind of my style. I think it's just a bit. Yeah, I don't know. I might do. Who knows? I'll see. I've not had time lately. It came out, and the hype all happened just before the conference, and it's sort of, and so I've definitely not had time to watch anything at all for a while. Have you ever thought of creating your own made-up language? No, not seriously. No, there are too many out there for me to learn without making up another one. I get why people like it and do it. I understand, and I think it's quite fun, but I've not done it myself. Okay. Kannst du auch Chinesisch? Also sag mal was auf Chinesisch. I don't know what to say in Chinese. Yeah, I studied it for a few years, but yeah, I don't use it very often, so my Chinese isn't amazing. But yeah, I've studied it for a bit. I don't know if it's just me or not. Whatever, I hear someone saying that his or her language is difficult, I feel that she wants me to say some superpower kind of bragging. I don't know if that's it, Rasmus. I think it's more people think that their languages are particularly difficult because that's what they're told, and they repeat it almost as a mantra. And I've heard people say that for many languages. I've heard people used to say that in the Netherlands, oh, Dutch is really difficult. Like, not really. The difficulty for people learning Dutch is trying to get Dutch people to speak to them in Dutch. That's the difficult thing. The actual language for most Indo-European speakers, I don't think it's particularly challenging as a language to communicate in. But getting people to speak to you in Dutch is probably the challenging thing. Czech people often say that. Polish people often say that the language is difficult. Well, yeah, Polish is fairly challenging, but if you're Czech, it's not so difficult. And if you're Polish, Czech is not so difficult. So it depends on your point of view and where you're coming from. But yeah, different people say that kind of thing. And I find it quite bizarre. But for Georgian, it's probably one of the only ones where I've said, okay, yeah, fair enough. It's fairly involved. I suppose if you speak Swan, Georgian's not too bad. But generally, people who speak related languages are in that region anyway, so they probably speak or understand Georgian anyway. But yeah, I mean, last year, my question about teaching English to my almost born nephew, who's now 8 months old. I talk to him almost only in English. I notice he observes me, my mouth, when I speak. Fantastic, Giovanni. I'm really pleased. It's really nice to hear. Do you think the Bible is a good book to learn languages with? Because a lot of people already know a lot of the Bible stories, and so it's easier to understand when it's a foreign language. Yes and no, JR. So as a general rule, I'm not so sure I'd advise religious texts, just as a general rule, unless you're particularly interested in religious texts. The reason being is that the vocabulary can be a bit odd for conversation. If your goal is to communicate, religious texts can often have quite strange vocabulary. So, for example, I don't know, words like praise and I'm trying to think of like words that I learned through exposure to religious texts in languages that I've never used, like word like mercy, for example, in English. You don't really use it very often, so it's a word that's used quite often in the Bible, but are you really realistically going to use it? Sacrifices and offerings and all these kinds of things are not things that you tend to use, and they're words that come up quite a lot. But it can be a useful tool if you know the Bible stories or you know religious texts generally. If you then see them in another language, it can be quite handy because you already know the story. Like if you read your favorite book in translation, you already know the story, so that kind of helps. But you could take that for anything. A lot of people use things like the Little Prince and stuff like that, Le Petit Prince. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, as a general rule, I don't always recommend it, but I do, particularly for languages where there aren't many materials, because there definitely are quite a lot of translations of the Bible. in a lot of languages that you wouldn't expect. And also he likes songs for babies and videos. I found fantastic. That's really nice, Giovanni. I like that. And I'm trying to sing that two times a week. I have doubts sometimes about myself and his, but I'm keep going. Yeah, keep on going and go for it. See how you get on. I mean, typically to speak a language, it needs to be every day, but doing it even a few times a week is better than nothing. And you're going to do something with that. I've not seen any studies to see how often they've tried with kids. If they've tried more than or fewer times than once a day, but the once a day is the one that I saw. But yeah, I mean, hey, it's good. It's good you're doing anything with him. It's brilliant. What resources can you recommend for learning Estonian? So, I mean, I've actually found the Speakly app. I mean, I use Speakly exclusively for Estonian when I learnt, and I found it to be pretty good. So I can recommend it just because I did it and then did a TV interview based on what I did. So it obviously worked to that point. And then there are a number of books that you can get afterwards if you want to sort of work on your grammar, your writing skills and stuff like that, if you want to work more on those things. So yeah, I mean, but Speakly worked well for me, so I can't not recommend something that worked. Dutch is almost like English. Dutch is fairly similar to English and a little bit of Indonesian. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the few lumpia en ja, pindasaus en zoiets. Geen idee. Geweldig. Even kijken. Fries is moeilijk. Ja, oh nee. Nee hoor. Ja, hangt ervan af. Ja, Fries is ook mooi. There's actually for Frisian, there's a nice course that you can do on, what's it called? FutureLearn. They have a Frisian course with the University of Groningen. University of Groningen. They have it. Yeah, Dutch have a really high level in English, yeah, so it's hard to get them to speak to you in Dutch. Yeah, it took me about 6 months living in the Netherlands for them to stop speaking to me in English. And it wasn't every time that they speak to me in English, but if I got to a word I didn't know in Dutch and I had to ask for the word, then they'd stop speaking and they'd go back. And it was a constant. I mean, I'd say after 6 months of being in the Netherlands, then I didn't get anybody change languages back to English with me at all after that 6 months. In between, there was obviously times where people would speak to me just in Dutch or people would switch, but there was kind of a mixed experience with that. Yeah, Bogdan. Kakosi. Super. Okay, I see. It's true, we all speak Dunglish. Yeah. In the Netherlands, the level of English is pretty good. What's the rarest language you've ever learnt? So I've studied a number of languages that are fairly exotic, I guess, in terms of like they're not often studied. I don't know the rarest. I mean, let me think. Probably Kristang is the rarest because there are only like how many? 1,100 or so speakers of Kristang. That's probably the rarest one I've studied in terms of numbers of speakers. Cornish is pretty. I don't know how many people speak Cornish very well. Cornish is also, I'm still studying it. Not, we're talking a few thousand people or so who speak it. Have you ever tried to learn any Native American languages or anything else indigenous without a well-established literary language? Oh, adding in the last bit makes that a bit tougher. But Native American languages, no, I've never studied any of them. I have books for Ojibwe because I met with some of the Ojibwe speakers in Minnesota when I was there in 2020, at the very start of 2020, before COVID stuff. And so I bought lots of books because I thought it was really nice to get them. And I've not studied any. I don't really have much of a connection to them yet. I'd like that to change in the future. Hopefully it will. Indigenous languages, generally, yes, I have. I mean, Welsh is an indigenous language to the Isles where I'm from, and so is Gaelic, and also Irish and Cornish as well. So they're languages that I am studying or have studied. Also Maori is an indigenous language. It's indigenous to New Zealand, and again, I've studied some Maori. I've studied, I started studying a bit of Mayan and Nahuatl, but I didn't get very far. I only did a few lessons, and then other things happened, but they're languages I want to get back to. Otherwise, other indigenous languages. Oh, North Sami as well, of course. I did a course in North Sami, which is indigenous to Sapni, which is the north of Scandinavia. And that's I think that's it. I think that's it. But without established literary language, and I don't want to make that kind of judgment. But yeah, I mean, so they'll have varying amounts of literature that you can get your hands on easily, for sure. Particularly in the Balkans, it's going to be a bit more difficult to get my hands on some of the things. Bonsoir Richard, je vous admire beaucoup. Merci, c'est gentil. Parlez-vous autant de langues sans l'arrivée d'Internet? Comment les nouvelles technologies ont influencé l'apprentissage des langues? Ça m'a beaucoup aidé avec plusieurs langues, parce que maintenant j'ai l'occasion de pratiquer plusieurs langues à la fois en ligne, et ça m'aide vraiment beaucoup à travailler, et pas seulement dans mon pays, mais aussi à l'étranger, ou dans le pays où je me trouve en ce moment, d'où vient enfin ma femme. Donc ça c'était pas possible avant. Et en ce qui concerne les langues que j'étudie, par exemple, comme je sais pas, en ce moment, les langues que j'étudie comme le kolwale, c'était impossible avant d'étudier une langue comme ça, d'ici, ou même d'une autre ville du Royaume-Uni. En fait, une autre région, en fait, si on n'était pas Cornwall, c'était impossible. Et maintenant, c'est bien possible, parce qu'on a Zoom, on a toute la technologie pour pouvoir avoir contact avec des gens qui parlent la langue, et étudient la langue avec toi. Et donc ça m'a vraiment beaucoup aidé. Mais je dirais que oui, ça peut ici aider, et être aussi un problème pour l'apprentissage d'une langue, parce qu'on tend aussi à utiliser l'internet pour regarder des vidéos, des trucs bizarres, et ça peut vraiment te faire perdre un peu le chemin, disons, quoi. Et pour cela, je dirais aussi qu'il y a des inconvénients en ce qui concerne l'internet, parce que si on a un bouquin, on a un livre, on a un cahier, on a un stylo, ou bien on commence à écrire ou à lire quelque chose, c'est plus facile si on est chez soi, et on commence à vraiment utiliser la langue juste pour apprendre la langue. Aussi, on a par exemple des cours de langue, mais en ligne, il y a trop de choses à regarder, il y a trop de choses à voir. Il y a constamment, par exemple, on a des courriers électroniques on reçoit tout le temps, et même WhatsApp ou tout ça, on répond à tout ce qu'on veut, quand on veut, et c'est un inconvénient des fois aussi. Mais je dirais en général, moi je suis très content avec l'internet, parce que ça me permet vraiment d'accéder des trucs que j'aurais pu accéder avant, la télé, radio, bien des livres, bien ouais, des bouquins, par exemple. Avec mon Kindle maintenant, je peux acheter des livres même dans des langues étrangères, hem et les lire. J'ai plein de livres sur mon Kindle, par exemple, ça m'aide sur mon iPad. Hem, C'était pas possible, hein, avant. Donc en général, oui, je suis content, ça m'a beaucoup aidé. Enfin, merci pour la question. You gotta go, Rasmus, nice to see you. Thank you for joining. Was Estonian cheap to learn? I find that teachers of less mainstream languages than italki charge less, but the cost of learning the language ever influenced your choice of learning a language? I don't tend to think of the cost, as in like, is it cheap to learn? I did a little bit for getting back into Indonesian, because I decided that I would look at languages that I'd studied before and see which one I wanted to revive and bring back to life. And I looked at Latvian, and I looked at Finnish, and I looked at Indonesian. And Indonesian was definitely, because I like all three of them. And for that purpose, yes, the cost did play a role. Generally speaking, if I want to learn a language, I want to learn a language. But it will definitely play a role in how often I get to have that kind of contact with a teacher. So that definitely does have sort of a bit of a role, play a bit of a role in the decision. But yeah, I don't think I've ever chosen a language like from scratch, purely based on that though. It tends to be more things that come into play more than just financial. Do you feel it's harder to stay motivated learning languages that you have fewer native speakers, fewer than a million, compared to languages with a lot of native speakers, hundreds of millions? Not necessarily, no. Depends on the community and how accepting they are. I find that that is the main motivator for me. So it doesn't really matter if there are like a few hundred people who speak the language and they're really, really keen and to have you in their community, and they're really kind and nice. It's definitely the quality and not the quantity. Yeah, so absolutely. Does it motivate me because it's rare and exotic? Not necessarily, no. So again, rare and exotic isn't necessarily a motivator. It would be more to do with a place, or am I interested in a place, or am I interested in people, am I interested in going somewhere, visiting, or something like that, more than exotic. I don't know, because I don't particularly find languages or people or communities exotic. I don't know, because I mean, exotic is all very relative, right? I mean, for some people, I might be exotic. I don't know, but because where I'm from is so different to where they're from, and the way I speak is so different to the way they speak, and my history is very different to their history, and so it's all very relative, the whole exotic thing, and I think just having traveled around quite a lot, I do feel quite desensitized to the whole exotic idea of a language or a people or a culture. I definitely find that we've got more in common than we often think. So that wouldn't necessarily be a factor for me to learn a language. Cheers from Brazil. Hey, nice to see you, Brian. Thank you. How's your Turkish going? Yeah, it's fine. It's a language I just use in my normal life, especially when COVID's not around. But yeah. Do you think your French accent is closer to France or Canadian French, or a mix of both? Prononciation Enfin, si je parle français, je crois que c'est plutôt le français européen que je parle, comme ça. Et si je commence à parler plus qu'avec un accent canadien, ça c'est vraiment différent pour moi. Et il faut faire un effort pour le faire. C'est pas donné, quoi. Cool. Hey Lucchino. Sei troppo bello per questo mondo, Lucchino. Nice to see you on the live, Luca. Do you speak Romanian and Estonian? So I studied Romanian because I lived in Moldova, and I had to use Romanian and Russian on the street living in Chisinau. But I've not really studied them very, particularly like on purpose. I guess it was more of I just did. And Estonian, well, with this whole challenge that I did in the summer, really, the Estonian. Yeah. Let me see. Lucchino, when are you going to make a multilingual video? Lucchino, veramente, non puoi fare questo. Ancora una volta abbiamo fatto già tanti anni fa. Allora, Per me già una cosa, possiamo parlare, chiacchierare un po' in varie lingue se vuoi, però per fare un video così, come abbiamo fatto tanti anni fa, non lo so, cosa ne pensi tu? Per me fa lo stesso, già è una cosa importante, ma insomma sì, mi piacerebbe parlare con te, è sempre un piacere. Eh. Um, Richard, I'm a native Indonesian speaker. I'll teach you for free. Oh, thank you very much. Wow, that's very, very kind. I love Indonesian, so yeah, I'd absolutely love to speak to you in Indonesian. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much, JR. I really appreciate it. Yeah, saya cinta bahasa Indonesia. I want to see a 1 hour interview with Luca rather than a movie. That's right, Luca will like that, I'm sure. Luca Lampariello, multilingual video is a great idea. Let's see, okay, cool. We'll figure something out. Yeah, we will. Luca Lampariello, multilingual video, yeah, cool. Yeah, Lucchino, sei troppo bello per questo mondo, veramente. The book Language Instinct by Steven Pinker shows that humans who speak different languages have a lot more in common than we think. I just finished reading it and it's a very good book. Sounds like a wise thing, absolutely. The interview sounds intriguing. It would be cool. It's always interesting to speak to Luca. He's very sweet. Hola Richard, gracias por dejarnos disfrutar de tu capacidad. Para ti, ¿cuál es el idioma en el que más te cuesta poder transmitir lo que realmente piensas en un tema complejo? Oye, es difícil decirlo porque depende del idioma, depende de lo que estoy pensando. Si estamos hablando de todos los idiomas que he aprendido durante todos los años, o estamos hablando de los idiomas que hablo bastante bien ya. No sé, depende de lo que estoy estudiando ahora mismo. Por ejemplo, el irlandés, por ejemplo, no lo hablo muy bien, así que para mí cuesta bastante para decir lo que sea. Igual con el escocés, el gaélico, pero bueno, es que depende mucho de todo, depende de tantas cosas. El cornolés, por ejemplo, sí lo hablo, pero no lo hablo muy bien. Así que para tratar de todos los temas que quiera, por ejemplo, en cornolés no, para nada, no lo sé hacer. Pero hay otra cosa que sí que podría sin problema, pero depende mucho del idioma, depende mucho del tema y depende mucho de cuánto tiempo llevas estudiando el idioma también. Any specific overall language learning tips for A1-ish high intermediate in a language? It is absolutely studying regularly and as regularly as possible. So every day, if possible, doing at least something every day and doing as much as you possibly can and getting as much contact with the language as you possibly can. That's what I would say is there are no other tips and tricks apart from that. And yeah, they would be the biggest things that I would give you to do. It just takes time and exposure to the language. Where are you living right now, Richard? Skopje, in North Macedonia. How about Arabic? So I studied Arabic 3 times in my life. I don't speak it. I've studied it. I can read the script. Kind of like a number of my friends that went to Quran school and went to sort of on the weekends they'd go to read the Quran. I'm kind of like them. I can read the sort of the letters, but don't necessarily know everything I'm saying. I do know some, obviously. I studied it, like I said, I studied it 3 times. And so once at university in Sweden, once in London, and once in the Netherlands at university in Leiden. But I have not studied it to a point where I feel confident to speak. And yeah, I mean, I know a number of words in Arabic, but yeah, I wouldn't say I speak it. Let me see. You do a video. Yeah, Yoga, it'd be cool to do a video with Luca. It's always cool to do a video with Luca. Richard, if you know Italian and French, you'll do fine in Romania. Just use the monitoring Slavic accent. Foarte comic. fuerte conmigo. Okay. Doing muito mais fuerte mo. Okay. Yes, I'm doing it daily now. Good to know that you're doing it daily. Yoga. That's really the key. I guess your name's Yoga Bliss, right? So if you're doing yoga and dancing as well, you know that you need regular exposure to it to get better and to become more supple. And it really is it's a bit like that with language, that your brain needs to get supple to the language, and the only way to do that is to keep exposing yourself to it as much as possible and as often as possible, so that it gets used to it. And that's really the way to do it. So I think you've got a great base. If you're into dance and yoga, you've got a great base to be able to do it. I'm sure you'll succeed. Do you know Persian? I know some Persian, Ali. I don't know Persian. I know some. I studied a very small amount, and I will get back to it. But I know some Persian words because it's Indo-European, and also because there are a number of Persian words through Turkish into Macedonian. So I know a number of words that way as well. And on how to, any thoughts on how to get your head around listening to Polish, Slavic languages in the early stages? Reading feels good. Understand and cases. For Polish, I would definitely look out for Piotr has a great thing for Polish, which is called Real Polish. Have a look at that. He speaks it quite slowly, and it's quite approachable. So have a look at that first for if you're starting out Polish. Just 1 second. Sorry about that. Let me just check. Okay, so yeah, with Polish, I would definitely say that that's a pretty cool thing to do. Real Polish. Piotr's great. He's got a really nice, clear pronunciation as well. He's on YouTube, and he's got like a whole podcast thing he does. It's cool. Also, the stories on Link actually are pretty good for if you want to practice reading along with Polish as well. You can check that out as well on Link. The ones I used these for Polish. Let me just see if I've got them here. I can show you. And I found them quite useful when I started. I used this one, Polish in 4 weeks. There's like 2 books of that. I used those when I was in Poland, and they've got like audio that goes with it as well. They're pretty cool. But you can use things like that too with Polish. But yeah, that's kind of a cool way to do it. Instead of them on purpose. That's okay, cool. Coming together with listening is painful. Well, listening can take time. It really can take time, especially with the Slavic languages. It can take time to get used to it. How would you recommend getting fluent in speaking with a heritage B2 language, mit Deutsch aufgewachsen? Also, so this is ein bisschen schwierig. I don't quite know what you mean. Do you mean that you have like a B2 understanding of the language and then you want to start speaking? Is that what you mean? Vampiric, let's see. You basically understand everything, but it's still hard to express myself because of grammar and forgetting words and such. It happens to all of us. So it can feel like it's a you thing, but it's not. It's an everyone thing. You just need lots of exposure and time to get into the language. It's just very normal. So what your experience is actually quite normal. It took me ages to get into some of the languages that I speak, and I still make mistakes. Still. And also sometimes I'll even speak a language and I'll wake up and like, oh, it's you feel like you've forgotten everything, but then you get into it and you just get back into it and it's fine. Which books would you recommend for reading purposes? I like literature of self-improvement kind of stuff. Then looking for things like that you like, in the language is probably a good way to start reading, I would say. It's looking for what you like in the languages you already speak and you already read, I think is the key thing. Ok, bons conselhos para aprender um idioma sem estudar, sem falando com a gente, então, mas falar ativamente e perguntar coisas também sobre a língua. Então, essas são coisas que eu tenho feito com o alemão, com outras línguas também, que tenho estudado os anos de universidade falando, usando as línguas de uma forma muito natural. Isso é como aprendi a falar russo e também o alemão, então são línguas que eu realmente não aprendi com aulas ou com livros, concretamente, mas são línguas que eu realmente falava com a gente na rua. E assim comecei a usar as línguas de uma maneira muito natural, e sem pensar muito na quanto era tudo correto, tudo bem com a gramática e tudo isso. Então, isso é possível, mas você pode tomar mais tempo fazendo isso, porque é uma coisa que realmente você precisa de fazer isso durante mais tempo para chegar a ter um nível para falar fluentemente. Então, isso é a coisa que você tem que pensar também, um balance disso. Polish in 4 weeks, yeah, Polish in 4 weeks, that's the one. My lips look blue. Yeah, I have something on them here at the moment. I don't know why. I've got, they dried out. I'm a bit dry at the moment, I don't know. Maybe they look blue on the camera. I don't know. Focus on what I'm saying, though. That's fine. You don't need to look at my lips too much. Any book recommendations for learning European Portuguese? 47. So we used Português Sem Fronteiras. Portuguese Without Borders is what we used at university. I don't know what else. I mean, you've got, for European Portuguese, you can obviously use the Teach Yourself, the colloquial, or the Assimil as well. They have that too. So yeah. Possibly any of those. I've not studied Portuguese in a long time. I studied at university. So remember that I don't know all the words in my native language. You don't know. Of course you don't. You don't know. You don't remember all the words in your native language. That's completely normal too. So how can you know them in any other language? Yeah. Cool. Anyway, I better go. I've been on for an hour and a half, and that's way longer than my normal talk. But I've enjoyed speaking to you, and it's been a few weeks since I did a live directly on YouTube, so it was great to catch up. And please do put in any comments or anything that you want for things you'd like to see, and I would be happy to take any recommendations or suggestions for topics for next week or the week after, or whichever week you want. And I will look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Until then, happy language learning, and I will see you very soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.